listeners and viewers.
Welcome to Tanked Up, the podcast all about craft beer and video games. I'm your host this week, Aadil. I'm joined, as pretty much always, by Lucy.
Hello, lovely host. How are you? How are you hosting today?
How am I hosting today? Poorly, given the late start and all of the weird technology issues.
I think you've done very well. Because I'd just be like, shut it all down.
It's over.
Yeah.
Tell Ben we all quit.
We had the 3-second podcast. That will do.
Yeah. And of course, and special guest Adam. You're back.
Yes, I'm back, and I bring technical troubles.
Yeah,
that's what I bring.
So
craft beer, video games, and technical problems.
I mean, it does sound like Tanked Up, to be fair.
Okay.
We're at Ben this week because he's off on holidays, being a family man, etc., etc. Off in the Wall
Still
of
drinking.
Corn. Yeah.
He's still drinking, still holding it down, making us proud. So.
Yeah. So why don't we crack on some beers and join Ben in spirit, if not in spirits. But Adam, do you have anything you're drinking?
Just classic Pepsi.
I thought Coke was the classic one.
Oh yeah.
Very interesting.
Perfect
for a craft beer podcast.
I mean, you could probably have fooled us and said that was like a black IPA or something.
I
wouldn't lie to you guys.
Yeah, that's fair.
Not like that.
Lucy, did you want to start with a special beer?
Yes, I do.
Because this weekend is the Bristol Craft Beer Festival 2021, which we were all excited.
Bologna Children's Book Festival.
Correct. It is not the Bologna Children's Book Festival. That, I think, was last month, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
That was after we ended with our podcast with Lauren. I was like, oh, check episode. Nope, wasn't on the podcast.
Only Lauren and Ben will get this.
But yeah, and so they very kindly sent us all a couple tins of the 4-way collaboration festival beer.
Mm-hmm.
Which
brewed by Wiper and True.
Mm-hmm.
And who are the other collaborators?
Inspiration from Wriggle. Somali spice blend recipe by Wevo Eats. Is that how you? Oh, here. Why don't I just do the thing I normally do and read the flavor text?
Because I love how they've written on the front of the can. It's very like, this is special. This is straight off the canning line.
Yeah.
But also, it's got all the information on the back, which I didn't realize until I turned it around.
Yeah, so this beer, it's the Aromatic Isles Pale Ale. This beer is a 4-way joint effort that celebrates the joy of sharing ideas and creating collaboratively. The New England-style pale ale is brewed with Zawash, a Somali spice blend mixed by local chef and scholar Fozia Ismail of Arawello Eats. Mm-hmm. We love the way the complex tropical fruity hop flavor is invigorated with vibrant spicing from cardamom, the shining light, and Fozia's Zawash recipe. The yeast is the Wiper and True House Yeast Blend. The hops are Citra, Sabro, and the well-known HBC 692. And the malts are Low Color Golden, Promise, Extra Pale, Carapils, Caragold, and it has barley, flaked wheat, and oats. Yeah, it is a 10 IBU, 4% pale ale.
Yeah. So I'm really interested in this. Like, am I going to pick up the cardamom? What is the cardamom going to taste like? How is that going to?
And what else there might be in this Somali spice blend, right? Like, it's not just cardamom. It's just that seems to be the.
Oh, smell that!
Oh, wow!
You can really smell that on the aroma. It's almost like the best way to describe it is like a faint ginger beer, but you're getting. Yeah, you're getting so much spice on that aroma as soon as you crack the can. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I'm guessing. I have no way of knowing this, but I'm guessing maybe some coriander seed as well. But that might just be some of the.
Maybe I'm getting like more lime zest, a bit of ginger. on the aroma. But
Oh,
wow, like, just smelling it, it's
yeah.
just. I wish all beer smelled like this, to be honest.
I
You know,
wish
like
most things smelled like this.
yeah, true. Like the Vault City brews, I was just like, this is such a pungent, like kind of aromatic.
Yeah, in a very different way. Those
Oh yeah.
smelled like the fruits that they were um,
Mm,
brewing with. This smells like proper spice.
yeah.
Um,
Proper spice blend. That smells gorgeous. It smells like I also described the Vault City brews this way, just like a lovely candle.
oh yes, like a Yankee Candle or whatever that
Yeah, yeah.
Instagrammable American candle company is called.
Mm.
I kind of naffed my pour a bit, but
It's all right. It's a good looking beer. It's sort
yeah,
of got like almost like you know, sort of ginger beery. It's probably a bit lighter than that. It's very cloudy. It's got a nice, probably just one finger, slightly bubbly head. But yeah, I can't stop smelling it. That just smells great. Have you had a sip yet?
I haven't. I'm still like reeling from. Mostly, I'm trying to figure out what's in this. But yeah, right.
Yeah.
There's a very limey or zesty.
Mhm.
I do think there's some coriander seed, and of course that cardamom.
Yes, the cardamon's like, yeah, you can definitely tell. It's very
Ooh.
perfumey in like the taste as well. Like
Oh yeah.
those flavors, not quite as strong on as in the aroma, but they do carry through. But yeah, a bit more subdued than you'd think. You know, just smelling it, but you are still getting like those sort of like lime zesty kind of flavors to it. It's very light.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 4%, so you know, probably not going to be the heaviest beer. But
Just take requisite picture. Yeah. I mean,
that's curious, but it's nice. It's refreshing. It's as I say, I can't get away from like a kind of lime zestiness that is like it's not sour, but it's got like a kind of zing to it that's just it's like a good palate cleanser and a good refresher.
yeah. I was gonna say what it's like a very clear taste. Like the very like spicy, perfumey body is sort of cut with this
Hmm.
crispness, and then you're like, oh, the
Absolutely.
taste is over. But actually, that's like the finish is just like a doesn't have that fruitiness and that tropicaliness. It just has maybe a touch tropical, but most of the spice blend is what's like lingering. So you just have
Hmm.
this like it's not in your face, but because of this that crisp liminess sort of coming in and just sort of stopping the taste, it feels much punchier than it is because at the end of the day, like this is clearly a Wiper and True beer. It's very like
True. Yeah.
that. It's nuanced. You can taste a lot of things, but it's not punchy. You know that they
Hmm.
we when every time we talk about them, we talk about how they um it's nuanced beers. The tastes are maybe more subtle, but you never get like an in your face beer, and this is what this has got a lot going on. But again, it's a Wiper and True a lot going on, so it's more like you can discern all these things, and you're not getting hit by this wall of taste, right? And I think that's
Yeah.
why that liminess is super interesting because it kind of like comes in and stops a lot of the taste. It feels like oh, that was a hit of flavor, but it's usually that comes with like an actual hit. But this is more like a dip afterwards.
Yeah. Well, it just reminds me of like North African cuisine where you have like the really pungent spices, but that is like leveled off with like uh zest and liminess and stuff like that. So it, and citrus. So it's like it's like a perfect blend of those, and it's pretty much like nothing I've ever tasted before. Which for a festival beer, for a showcase festival beer, I think it's a great one to have that kind of, you know, tentpole status for the festival. It's
Yeah,
really good.
yeah. I
It's
was gonna
really
say
interesting. Mhm.
it's a pale ale. But it's very unique. But it's like the unique parts aren't like I said, the benefit of working with someone like Wiper and True, the unique parts aren't
Hmm.
so strong that someone who wanted a pale ale who would go to like even if this isn't your type of jam, you're still gonna be like, oh, that was a super interesting beer, and you're not gonna be like, I don't want to finish it because it's not it's swinging for the fences in a different sort of way, right? It's like we're making a very interesting beer that, like you said, Lucy, I've never had tasted anything like this either. But it's not like
it still tastes like a beer.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
I'm getting a little more sweetness on the lingering finish, which I quite like.
Yeah, I'm sort of getting like, yeah, just like maybe a little bit of orange, like maybe clementine kind of
Like a
taste
sweet
to
orange,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, just slightly at the end.
Yeah, I think what that is that sweetness and the citrus having faded a bit from that sort of limey hit kind of coming together. This is
It's a trip, and it's really interesting. I mean, if you're at the festival this week, or do you think they're gonna like? This is probably a one-off, isn't it? But
I think so, yeah.
yeah, this is. I feel very privileged to taste something this interesting
Yeah.
because you have interesting experiments. We see. I think we're seeing more and more like beers paired with like that kind of like cuisine and guests who are from restaurants. I think in the last couple of weeks, I'm sure Ben had one recently, and
Mm.
it's interesting. It's not going too far in the other direction. It still tastes like a beer, and it tastes like a very good beer, and then it tastes like a beer that I've never actually, this kind of style I've never actually tasted before, and but it still retains that core, you know,
Yeah.
beeriness. It's really good. I'm super impressed by that.
Yeah, me too. Do you know what Wriggle is?
No, because I saw a riddle. It's like, is that some children's play
And then I promise,
area or something?
Adam, we won't
Oh,
continue to ignore you
boy.
in the beer corner.
It's alright. I'm just glad that the weird hammering that suddenly appeared hasn't been picked up too badly so far.
Oh no.
The entire building's been, pretty much silent since I got home from work, and then we started this.
So, like, the party starts when
And then
Adam's
it's like,
back.
yeah, they're like, oh, he's just started a podcast. We better just hammer everything for no reason.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Wriggle is looks like a food and drink magazine thing.
Oh, okay, right.
Oh, so they might have brought the other two together.
Hmm. Interesting.
Interesting,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah. But
But
yeah,
yeah, so the four-way joint effort is the Bristol Craft Beer Festival, Wyvern True, Wriggle, and Arowello Eats. I'm also, just based on the nuance of that spice blend and the way it, like, now I'm super curious to track down Arowello Eats. And
I mean, we're in Bristol, imagine, so
yeah.
go for it. Like, I
Um,
mean, North African food is just great anyway. So
yeah, I mean, it's not like
why
twisting
wouldn't
my
you?
arm.
Well, I think that
let's.
like kind of just one last thing. I think that
Mhm.
kind of like orangey taste was more like bergamot, like not quite, not
More,
too sweet, yeah, but just yeah,
a little more like floral, maybe.
yeah, a bit more floral, a little bit more bitter, more herbally, but yeah, yeah, but yeah, just great beer. Yeah, that's my closing thoughts. Great beer.
Excellent. Yeah, let's maybe, if we can, if we have any other thoughts by the end of this one, we can.
Yeah, thanks to obviously Bristol Craft Beer Festival and Tom like sending it to us. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks again.
Hopefully we'll see them all next year. Should be good.
Yeah, that would be a trip. Well, for you, literally.
Trip worth taking.
Yeah, but anyway, let's move on to them old video games. And Adam, let's start with you, who've waited patiently drinking your Pepsi Classic. What have you been playing? / you had a thing you were going to talk to us about.
Oh, I have been playing Samurai Warriors 5, which was very kindly given a preview code for. So it came out Monday or Tuesday? I think it was Tuesday. It was officially released, but I played it over the weekend and a wee bit since as well. Wrote up some thoughts on outoflives.net that you can check out on my
Mhm.
impressions so far, but I'm obviously not finished the game or anything yet.
What platform did you play it on?
PC,
Ah,
Okay.
yes.
Steam. It's a nice Steam code.
Mm,
It's on
everything.
pretty much everything. It's on Switch. It's on
Oh wow.
Yeah, Switch, I was
PS4
surprised.
and Xbox One. I don't think it's on the new gen, but I'm not 100% on it.
You'll probably come
No,
to it, won't it? Yeah,
yeah.
just like free upgrade or something.
Yeah,
And it
probably
is
further
also
down the line there
not
would be.
on Macintosh OS.
It's a Steam exclusive for PC. It's always listed as PC bracket Steam.
Yeah.
Classic.
Yeah. So I've been playing away at that, and
So
as I say,
if
I wrote
people
some
weren't
thoughts.
familiar, what can you tell us what kind of game it is? And
Yeah,
Can you
it's
tell me what kind of game it is?
yeah, it's from Koei Tecmo. They're the publisher, and the
Mm,
developer is Omega Force, who are this is sort of their jam, as it were. This is what that team does, is make these kind of games. And they're styled as either Musou games or Warriors in quotes games.
mhm.
Musou is Musou. Um, I can't remember what the translation of that was, but never mind. But a lot of people know them as the Warriors games, which is Dynasty Warriors and Samurai Warriors, and
Mhm.
there's those are the two kind of mainline series. I've been more of a Dynasty Warriors player in the past,
Okay.
and there's some spin-offs, and there's a long history of licensed versions, which is a lot of people would maybe recognize, like Hyrule Warriors is a kind of
Yes.
recent
right,
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
yeah.
There's also like One Piece Warriors and Gundam something or other as well.
Okay.
There's a few kind of versions of it kicking about. So the basic style of them is you play as a character in kind of arcade style stages, which are based around in the Dynasty Wars and Samurai Wars style games. They're based around battles
Mm.
in particular time periods. The Dynasty Wars ones is the Three Kingdoms era of China, which is sort of around 200 AD, or there's a kind of century around there where there's a lot of fighting happening in China. And then the Samurai Warriors ones are based on the Sengoku period in Japan, which is the 1400s, I want to say. I've completely
My
forgotten
history's
off the
not
top of
that
my
good. Your guess
Yeah,
is better than mine.
but that's a time period that even if you don't know very much about, you'll probably recognize some of the names of people from it.
Yeah.
Like
Mm.
Nobunaga Oda and those kind of people. Even if it's from video games, like Nobunaga's ambition and stuff like that, they're very kind of well-known characters in that sense, as well as historical figures. Yeah, so they're based around battles, and the whole idea is basically you play a sort of overly powered and super stylized version of these historical figures, and some who are a bit more fictional than others. With
Mhm.
some cool moves, and you basically tear up the battlefield, and that's kind of the idea. And then you progress through the games, going through various stages depending on how they're
Mhm.
set out. And Samurai Warriors 5 has done some interesting things compared to what I'm used to with them, but to be fair, they do experiment a lot, even though the basic principle of the game has always stayed kind of basically the same. There is a lot of very distinct differences between a lot of the various iterations of them, which we could get into if you want it after. Um, any questions so far?
Yeah, because like from the untrained eye, like I know the style of like Muso games, but like people who like Muso games, and people who
Yeah,
don't, they're just like, oh, they pass over it. But I'm guessing, I mean, this is described as a tactical action game. From a, as I say, untrained eye, it just looks like you're hacking and slashing.
Yeah.
But the same way, like a Devil May Cry or something like, it looks like just
yeah,
hacking and slashing. But to be good at those games and get like an S rank is a completely different gameplay approach and understanding the mechanics of it. So,
yeah.
what
I
makes
mean,
these games so engaging, and what's the
Hmm.
tactics of them without I mean, I don't know if that's a loaded question or not.
No, I mean, I don't, I don't know about the, the tactics. It's not something I
Mhm,
would have considered tactics in that sense. There's tactical elements to them, but
mhm,
they're more kind of set dressing as opposed to being like a full on system as such.
mhm,
But yeah, the hack and slash kind of element of them is kind of the point. But
yeah,
they fall into the same kind of category in a weird way. It's like one of the reasons I like the like Dragon Ball Z fighting games a lot of the time is
mm,
because they don't have very long, complicated combos to learn.
Hmm.
mm,
The versions of those games I like best are the ones where your Kamehamehas and special moves and stuff like that are like R1 and square.
Yeah.
But although they're kind of the controls are simple in that sense, a lot of them do a very good job of building intricacy into them by you getting better at using what they put in them. So like Dragon Ball Xenoverse 1 and 2 are very good examples of that where the basic principles of the buttons and the combinations of that you can press are very simple to understand.
mhm,
But the difference between someone just mashing at the controller and someone who's timing the button presses and doing the right things at the right points and chaining all the stuff together,
yeah,
you can really tell the difference. And you can feel yourself getting better at it as you go through the game.
yeah.
And that's sort of the same principle behind why I like
Okay,
the warrior styles of
yeah,
games. So you the attacks you've got in Samurai Warriors 5, you have normal attacks on square, and I'm using PlayStation controller. So it's square for normal attack. Power attack is triangle. Uh, so you can do combinations of so many presses of square and then triangle, and it does an extra attack. It's that's slightly more powerful, and depending on the weapons and the character you use, there's differences and things. You have your Musou attack, which is when you fill up the bar. That's on circle, which is like your super special move.
mhm,
You have something in this one called ultimate attacks, which is the L1 and square or is it R1 and
okay,
square? I can't remember.
yeah,
And and the face button. So all four, you can have something on each of them, which are kind of one-off moves that have a kind of cooldown on them. And one of the things that Samurai Warriors has that Dynasty Warriors doesn't is something called hyper attacks, which is where you use triangle first, and they're more kind of wide sweeping attacks that you use to kind of attack groups of the kind of smaller enemies, as opposed to the officers who are supposed to be a bit more of a challenge.
yeah.
And so you basically go around, combining different versions of these and learning the
Okay,
weapons and stuff,
yeah.
and beating the crap out of a lot of people. Essentially, is ultimately what it comes down to.
So some of the tactics come from like crowd management, like who do I attack
Yeah,
first, and yeah,
yeah, but when the games are at their best, so you get your regular enemies who are just they're really there just for you to knock into the sky and get rid of.
hmm,
You'll have enemies who have certain extra abilities in Samurai Wars 5. There's your classic archers and stuff, but there's also like riflemen,
yeah,
and
Hmm.
there's some like particular enemies who have like shields and spears who you can't just use the hyper attacks on. You've got to,
mm,
they defend themselves a bit more, so you've got to deal with them slightly differently. And then in addition to the regular enemies, you have what they term officers, which are either kind of generic named people who were about at the time, or the playable characters that are maybe on the other sides of the battles and stuff like that, depending on what the story is doing.
okay,
Who they have much more health and much more aggression and stuff like that, and depending on your difficulty level, they can be very difficult or relatively easy depending on how they go. Um, you can kind of tune that to kind of suit yourself a wee bit better. But they're supposed to present more of a challenge. So
yeah,
the way the stages or the battles are laid out, they're because they're based on history. They have like objectives kind of layered through them as the battles progress that help you turn it in your favor. So there'll be like, oh, in this battle we're trying to capture this castle here, but before we do that, they have this base here which will let us, build something. like our siege weapons, and we build that, and then we move. Or the enemy are trying to attack our supplies, so you have to go there and defeat the enemies before they can do that, and that sort of
Okay.
thing. So that there's tactical elements to those, because again, the idea is they shepherd you through them in such a way, but you have some options as to where you can go and what you're prioritizing depending on what you want to be doing. I do find that Samurai Wars 5 in particular is quite linear with the battles in that way so far. And that, not that you can't do anything else, but your life is so much easier if you just kind of follow the path that's laid out for you to do them in. It doesn't give you too many options. Whereas in
Okay. Yeah.
kind of the older games, particularly some of the older Dynasty Warriors ones, you could basically do whatever you wanted.
Okay.
and,
You
and
could go
run,
kill the commander
yeah, you could
straight
speed run
away.
them if you wanted. Yeah, you just run
Okay,
straight for them
interesting.
and stuff like that.
Don't deal with the cannon fodder or the cavalry, just go straight for the head honcho.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I mean that's a dangerous way of playing the game, but you could do that in some of the older ones, definitely.
Speed running.
Yeah, but a lot of the battles in this one have a lot more gating. Like there'll be like, oh, there's an enemy base here or garrison, and the gates are shut, so you've got to either defeat an officer to open them, or something in the kind of staging of the battle has to happen so that it'll open. That kind of gates your progress a wee bit. That it's just one of those. That's just how they've kind of designed it.
Yeah.
In this particular one.
So how many hours did you say you played through so far? Ish?
When I wrote the article the other day, I'd played just under 12, and I'm at just under 13 at the moment.
Cool. How long are these games typically? Is that a good, chunk of the game, or have you got a long way to go?
I'm not sure how many. Actually, that's just part of the problem. I played a lot of Dynasty Wars. I know the history of that a lot better than I do the Samurai Wars ones, and I've only kind of played like an hour or two of previous versions of Samurai Wars. This is the first one I've really played a lot of, so I'm not as familiar with the history on this one. So I'm not sure how much
Um,
more I have to go.
I'm looking at how long to beat. Average of those games is probably about 25 hours. The fifth one, what you're playing is, they say not too many
People.
aggregated scores, and people, but it says 22 and a half.
It's
But
one
it
person.
only came out. Oh, is it one person?
One person on the Switch.
Is that
Okay.
100? Is that 100%ing it though, or is that just getting to the
That's
end of the story?
a main story, it looks like.
Yeah, but
'Cause,
average out of all of them, they look around 25 hours across the series each. So.
it's one of those, again, it very much
Mm.
depends on the version, because they approach how they do it very differently. So the approach that they've taken for Samurai Wars 5 is much more stripped back compared to what they've been in the past. This is a problem Dynasty Warriors in particular suffered from, is ballooning rosters to the stage where like the characters that have their own proper like character model and art and storylines and special weapons and everything has gotten to kind of ridiculous degrees, because as the years have went by, they've just continued to add more and more to it over time. And so for this one, they've stripped right back, and so they're telling two stories in this game. There's no Bananga Oda, his story, and there's I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation. Mitsuhide Akechi. Apologies to anyone I've offended by mispronouncing any of this. I do apologize. So they're telling a story from two perspectives. You start with Nobunaga, and you're playing through. So it's really his story I played through. I'm on chapter 5 of his story just now. I haven't really started in the other one, but Mitsuhide Akechi has appeared in Oda's story so far. It's just that obviously there's other stuff that he'll be doing as he goes through it. It's the perspective switch. But they're only one part of the entire Sengoku period. So there's a lot of there's plenty of characters in this game who are and they're all based around characters that they either interact with or are part of their kind of forces. You know, so there's famous generals and some other characters that are they're either main antagonists in their storylines and things. Whereas in previous games they've had a far broader range of characters dealing with all the other aspects of the period as opposed to just their kind of story. Which I think is safe to say, as is everything, is split opinion from some fans.
Yeah.
Because of course everyone has favourites. And so they're choosing to focus on this particular kind of element and arc of that period of time. Means that they've had to cut a lot of other characters and things. That means that you're not dealing with some people's favourite parts of the era and favourite characters in the games that they haven't that they're used to having in the games at the moment.
So do these games ever shift like considerably in the timeline, like the actual historical timeline? Are some like set like more in the future or in the past or anything? Or
No,
they're just sticking to this specific time frame?
mostly what they've done is they've told the story of like the entire timeline, like the entire
Oh,
period.
okay, right.
Is it in the same way? Again, I'm really drawing heavily on my Dynasty Warriors kind of experience in this. You know, the Three Kingdoms era is over a century long.
Okay, so they've never like say, okay, we're gonna do this other century or we're gonna do this other time period,
No,
Okay,
no,
interesting.
again, it's partly because the two eras they've picked are two of the most famous ones, and they're two of the
Okay.
most interesting in the sense that you know the the kind of the status quo of the country kind of falls apart,
Mhm.
and then you have all these various in Japan. It's the again I'm going to butcher the pronunciation. The daimos, like the leaders of like provinces or
Alright.
the prefectures in that who they start gathering up their armies and attacking one another because the shogun who was supposed to be in control of everything loses influence.
Yeah.
And so the country just disintegrates into loads of these factions fighting amongst themselves until
Yeah.
eventually one of them ends out coming out on top, and that takes quite a long time. The Three Kingdoms era is similar. It's the Han Dynasty that it ruled pretty much unchallenged for 400 years, just disintegrates.
That's interesting because
Yeah.
like knowing tangentially what these games are about, like when I think of these games, I always think back to the PlayStation 3 reveal where it's like it's become a meme now, but where it's like very Musou-esque game. I don't know if it was by Koei Tecmo or whatever, but you're saying historical battles and like here's this giant enemy crab. And it's like
Oh
when did that
yeah,
happen
yeah.
in
I remember.
history?
I remember
Yeah.
that. I can't
It
remember
never
what game that was
actually
for. Oh god.
I
Yeah.
I can't either, but I never pieced together that these games were, yes, they are using that historical real world context.
Yeah.
Because when I see like a game like this, I just think it's oh yeah, it's because obviously it's like over the top and it's very gamified and it's like of course it is. It's not like
Yeah.
something this makes no sense, but like Crusader Kings, just because it's like it seems a bit more grounded just because it's like mostly text. That's
Yeah.
ridiculous. It's like crazy things happen in that as well. But
Yeah.
just the over the top nature of like the game, it's never occurred to me that
Yeah.
oh yeah, they're actually drawing on real world history, and that's interesting because it's like so I can learn
Yeah.
something about
I mean,
Edo period Japan or whatever.
yeah. I mean, Dynasty Warriors is like the reason I got interested in ancient Japan.
Mm,
Sorry,
Hmm.
ancient ancient Chinese
mhm.
history. because it started from the Three Kingdoms. Because
Yeah.
you're right, there's a sort of, whatever age I would have been at the time, kind of 2000, 2001, playing like Dynasty Warriors 3 on the PS2. I would have been like 8 around that
Jeez,
kind of time.
Oof.
Mm.
That there's a light bulb moment in the
Mhm.
oh, these people were real. Like what? China's a real place. Like what are you talking about?
The
You mean
devil,
it's
you
not made
say?
up for my game? Yeah, exactly. Because being a kid, and then I spent time, because as you do when you're young and you don't have as many choices of games to play and whatever else, you spend a lot of time playing them, and then you spend a lot of time reading the encyclopedia entries of all the characters that are in the game and all
I
the
mean, that's
battles and
cool.
stuff.
Mm.
Yeah, and
I
then
had no idea, and you see, I learned so many new things with your podcast.
I'm glad to be of service. I hope other people also appreciate it.
I would imagine so.
Yeah, so Dynasty Warriors kicked that off because it's based in the Three Kingdoms period, but specifically it's based on the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, which is a novel that's written based on the actual like historical documents from the kingdoms.
Hmm.
Okay.
It's it has a bit of unreliable authorship,
Yeah.
some tweaking of the narrative, shall we say, some propagandizing in favor of certain characters and stuff.
Giant
But
enemy crabs, yes.
not quite, but there's mad mysticism crap and
Yeah.
and that sort of stuff in them, and it's in the novel that kind of really cements. I mean, it's like a 13th century novel as well. It's really old by today's standard, and it's talking about stuff that happened 1,000 years before it was written.
Jeez.
So it's
You just
yeah,
can't comprehend, can you?
yeah.
Wow.
So the typical time period of the Three Kingdoms is kind of 180 to 280 AD roughly. Yeah, so it's roughly a century worth.
Mhm.
And the Romance of the Three Kingdoms is really the novel is kind of what cements that time period as the time period to consider because it has all these the in China it's considered one of their five classics. It's their
Yeah.
sort of like Shakespeare-esque sort of stuff
Okay.
or their like tales of like King Arthur and the Round Table and all
Yeah.
that. It has all of those. So that there's episodes and idioms and stuff that come from these novels and the characters and the events that happen in them that have been, they're exaggerated and stuff, but they're based on a lot of stuff that happened. There's some stuff that's written in the book that you go, there's no way that happened, and they're like, yep, that's lifted directly from the historical text. This over here
Wow.
was a lie, but this bit was definitely real. And there's exaggerations as well. The way the novel's structured, a lot of the battles kind of hinge on the generals fighting one-on-one in bouts. And a bout is I attack you, you block, you attack me, I block, and that's a bout. And they tag
Sorry,
roll.
what's it about?
I'm glad I can see your face, otherwise the listeners aren't going to know what that meant. Yeah, and it's based around that, and then eventually one would win, and the other would run away, and then the army would sweep in and clear and that's kind of what hinged the battles as opposed to the actual fighting between the soldiers, sort of thing.
Interesting.
And so it tells all these stories, and that's kind of what cements that in kind of the popular culture in China and why Koei originally, now Koei Tecmo and Omega Force picked the Three Kingdoms era as the era to do that because it already has these larger than life characters and stories that they've then added their own layer of stuff on top of with their own gameplay design and all that. And so through the years you've got the historical basis, the romance of the Three Kingdoms kind of layer of creativity on it, and then the iterations of the games have added elements to things. So certain characters have certain looks that are based on that don't look right if they change them because that's not how they looked in previous games.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's some that are based on historical descriptions of them, and no, that character has to have this kind of weapon because it's literally in the book, and those kind of things. It's,
That's super interesting.
yeah,
I,
and
I just never looking at one of those games, I thought, oh, this is drawing on like real world history, and it's
yeah,
just fascinating. And it's like we look at, I don't know, like Ubisoft games, like I think like after the Notre Dame got burnt down, it's like, oh, we can rebuild this with what was in the game because they're using like literal photogrammetry and reference and stuff like that, and it's like
yeah,
this is different in that sense, but it's just it's interesting to know that they're probably like massive nerds, like the
yeah,
history and stuff like that. It's like how it can be told in a new context and bring people like you and draw people like you in and make
yeah.
you interested in that stuff. Like I don't know. I mean, some games do that, but like not all of them. Yeah, and most of them don't. So, yeah.
Yeah, it depends because you're right. Like you don't really have to engage with it in that level,
Mm.
like, but because these games are essentially history, the anime that you play. Um,
Yes.
you can't help but be kind of drawn in sometimes by some of the characters. So
Mhm.
you'll just kind of latch on over no apparent reason just because of how they present them in the
Yeah.
game. It's like, oh, that character's a bit feisty or a bit funny. I quite like them. And then you remember their name, and then you see it pop up somewhere, and you think,
Mm.
I recognize that name. And then you Google them, and you go, oh, and they're in this game. And then sometimes that's enough to hook and get you in.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
and I'm hoping I'll do a bit more of that with the Sengoku period of Japan on
Yeah. Yeah.
of playing
Mm.
It's
through.
another gateway. Yeah.
Yeah, because as I said, I haven't played a lot of the Samurai Warriors games in the past. It's mostly been kind of the Dynasty Warriors side of it that
Mhm.
I've played. So I'm much more familiar with it. And I did seek
Yeah.
out like a Romance of the Three Kingdoms podcast that went through the book.
So when
Um,
we see you on Mastermind, we're gonna like, oh, we know what his topic is.
no, I'm not that much of an expert, but it's one of those like again, these games have helped create a market where
Mm,
it's a Chinese American guy called John Ju. That's ZHU, the Chinese spelling
mhm,
and pronunciation. Who there's a market there for someone like him who's read the original text
mhm.
and the English translations of the text and is able to kind of meld the two and then
Yeah,
translate it properly into that each episode of that podcast is about half an hour to 20 minutes long, and he breaks it up in a really interesting way and he explains some of the references that crop up so that
okay.
you go, oh, these characters keep mentioning this thing, the reason they keep doing that is because blah blah blah, or the reason this character did this and it was a big deal even though to you it sounds daft is
Yeah,
because this is what they believed at the time. Like there's
that's awesome.
elements of
Yeah.
storyline that hinge really heavily on people like cutting their hair as part of like shows of their will sort of thing, or
Mm,
that they're being serious about something. And that sounds a bit crazy to a Western audience who doesn't have any connection to that. But in Japan, keep doing that. In China at the time, it
yeah.
was considered your entire body was considered a gift from your parents. That was
Okay.
their belief at
Yeah.
the time. So you didn't cut your hair.
Mhm.
You just
Right.
had hairstyles where they wrapped it up in that. So for you to go and actually do that, which is
Yeah.
technically an insult to your parents as far as the culture is concerned, to prove that no, you're serious about
Yeah.
this, or
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
whatever the thing is. That's why it's important, and he takes the time to a wee aside here and
Yeah.
explains those kind of references and various things, and he also cuts out some of the faff that
Mm,
is there's lots of names and people that are, because it's mostly historical, the novel, with that like extra 5 to 10% of artistic flourish.
Right.
So there's a lot of characters and stuff that get named to turn up for like 5 pages and then disappear.
Mm.
um, and so it doesn't always tell you those people's names because they don't turn up. They just you know, you don't need to remember it.
Right.
It, you know, he's able to kind of parse this is the information you actually need, and this is overwhelming information that you don't really need that we can get by with.
I mean, that
You know,
seems reasonable. That's a
you
good
know,
balance.
yeah, name general number one sends out red shirt number two to attack the general who's killed everyone else up to this point so far. Guess what happens? Red shirt gets killed. You know, it's those kind of
Yeah.
references and stuff that helps because he's been introduced and there's like a page of his backstory and stuff for him to get chopped down. You
Right.
know, like 2 seconds later, you don't really need that for every character, but you do for some who are more important.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a big long tangent to get to. Yeah, I learned a lot about the time for here based off of playing the games, and then learning where the games do some of their own thing, and you know, because they're games, they're not strictly historical in that sense. It is very much it's historically based. The characters and a lot of the events and the battles are all historical, but
Creative
they're
license.
yeah, but there is that element of well, the attacks are very flashy and showy, and there's room for other stuff to go on as well that isn't necessarily strictly true, but is interesting or fun. So they are, as you said, they are interesting. That you can engage with them on that level, or you can ignore it and just have fun beating the crap out of people on the battlefield.
Right.
And with very nice, stylish attacks and stuff, which are very good.
Yeah. Whole new world to these Musou games that
I mean,
Yeah,
has,
I
has
mean,
never understood, never appreciated, never listened to it, but yeah.
yeah. I mean, you're right. They do kind of fall into a weird niche in that way that a lot of people just, which is fair enough. Some people just don't vibe with them at all, and a lot of people just kind of dismiss them out of hand a lot of the time. Don't
Yeah.
really give them a fair shake just because they're. I mean, they're not.
They see Musou and they think,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But that's out of education for the. I guess those people see it and they've tried one before. They know what it is. Like,
yeah.
whereas me,
Yeah,
I'm just like totally uneducated about them. So
yeah. It's because they do get wrapped up a little bit sometimes,
Mhm.
and because they're long running series now, they do get wrapped up a little bit in kind of circular arguments about
Mhm.
between fans about what is preferable
Mm.
because they've been through so many iterations. And like one of the things that I mentioned in my impressions that I wrote up about this one in particular is that it feels like they've prioritized speed in how the
Mhm.
combat works in a way that I'm not as used to. Most of the Dynasty Warriors games have a bit of a slower pace than this,
Mhm.
Mm.
and I feel that that comes across in like every element of the game, including how it presents the story and things like that. It feels like it's very much going. Here's some context. Now let's just get on with it. And it feels like it rushes you through the battles a little bit, but that's I don't know how much of that is just me and how much of that is the game. You know, you can sometimes feel games they maybe shepherd you towards something, or you feel like it keeps pushing you to go quicker.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
do get that impression from it, and that's kind of that creates some tension from kind of because I come from like the Dynasty Warriors 3 days and going forward. There's you know my expectation of the game is a bit different to maybe what someone new coming into it would be that maybe will find that this is perfectly fine for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I'm used to it being that wee bit slower and feeling like like spending the time to clear the battlefield of the small enemies felt worthwhile in previous games. Sort of that you wouldn't just leave them behind and keep running off to the next objective. Whereas in Samurai Warriors 5, it feels like it's constant. If you play it that way, you end out feeling like you're falling really far behind and not progressing properly.
Okay.
Like
So it's a
to the
different
speed that
cadence to each game.
yeah, to the speed that the game's kind of trying to get you going at. And that's just one of those things that I'll probably adjust to fully
Mm.
eventually and not really think about.
Yeah, it sounds
Or
like
I'll get to the end and it'll still be one of the things that I go, this just isn't the speed that I'd like to play it at, but it's not broken or anything. It's just not my
not what you
preference,
used to.
and that's fine as well. You
Mhm.
know, there's plenty of room in these games for them to be different.
Yeah,
And for them to play with the styling of it as they go through the iterations.
it sounds like how people talk about Forza Horizon versus Forza Motorsport. Like one's more fast and arcadey, and the other one's much
Yeah.
more considered and everything. Like preaching to do two different crowds, but seemingly make them happy. But yeah,
Yeah, it's, it's one of those things because there tends to be because Omega Force develops all of these kind of games,
mm,
or pretty much all of them anyway. Definitely all of the Dynasty Warriors and Samurai Warriors games. So there's always learning that goes through between each of them that comes. So like Dynasty Warriors 9, which is the most recent Dynasty Warriors game, is the one
okay,
that's the one that was open world and all that, and that's one that I played a couple of hours of and had to stop. Like that was
okay,
incredibly disappointing for me personally, even though
okay.
some people liked. Um, that there was a couple of reasons for that. That it's not entirely down to the open world of it. That's one of those. That's a good idea, not entirely implemented the way that would probably have worked best. I had trouble with how that game looked. Like the graphics in that actually gave me a headache
Mm,
because there wasn't enough contrast between things and things like that.
yeah,
And I know that, since I played it, that was when it launched, however long ago that was. There was a lot of updates and stuff like that, and it's improved obviously since then. But I've never went back to it because it's just not been, um, because it put me off that badly the first
yeah,
time. And then for Dynasty Warriors 9 Empires, which is coming out either later this year or early next year, is like one of the spin-offs they're doing of it, and they're scaling back how the open world stuff is used and
okay.
going back to having the individual battles, but using that side of it for other stuff.
Yeah,
Which it
so I'm
looks like.
guessing you weren't the only one with complaints if they're kind of like retroactively spinning it off.
Um, no, I'm definitely not. But it's one of those that I appreciate the fact that they tried it because it was they went for something different. They're not for all their it's just a Warriors game. They do iterate. There is a lot of variation in them, and trying to keep everybody happy is not gonna get them very far. And I'm wondering if their approach to Samurai Wars 5 with having that more scaled back, more focused kind of storyline and stuff and characters that they're focusing on is something that if it go, I don't know what the reception to it's been like, so I'm wondering if they'll take that forward and do something similar in Dynasty Wars. So instead of trying to cover the entire time period, maybe they'll say, right, we're just going to focus on one of the three kingdoms and tell that story, or maybe they'll focus on like the early period up to kind of the mid period where things kind of shook out into that three kingdoms block before, and then do something in a later game that goes from the mid period into the end where it kind of consolidates again. I'm wondering if they're going to take that side of it forward because we'll just keep adding a new character or two every time isn't going to
Yeah.
work forever because it creates so many problems. Like people always complain about it's the clone weapons, which is characters who have weapons that have essentially the same move sets.
Right. Yeah,
With
it's
just like
standard in these types of games, yeah.
yeah. That's a feature of all of the games really going back, but it goes there was a period where they had a really good balance between there was a good range of weapons and the ones that did have that there weren't very many of, even though there was plenty of characters in it. And then as the rosters continued to get bigger, they're having to do that more and more, and then they're changing which weapons characters have and stuff, and it's one of those. And then they've gotten a little bit bogged down, I think, in feeling the need to have more and more weapons for you to unlock. So there's
Right.
more weapons of the same type that you find or pick up or get rewarded with as you progress and play the game, as opposed to having fewer of each kind, but diversifying each, one for each character sort of thing. But this is, I think they get complaints no matter what they do on that front
Yeah.
anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
It seems like one of those fan bases where, like, most people who have played this have played the entire series.
Yeah,
And it's
and
like,
this is,
yeah.
I think that this is a problem like all long running series run into is your first game that you play and fall in love with in a series kind of dictates your expectations of the series a little bit, because it
Absolutely.
formulates for you what the games should be, and you come up with your own idea of how they should play or what they should focus on or what features should be in them or what characters there should be and what the characters should have as weapons and so on. And any time that they move away from that or change something or add something different, it gets attacked.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
And conversely, if they don't change anything, people will be like, "This is the same game." Yeah,
and
it's a rock and a hard place, isn't it?
yeah,
I
and
envy them.
that is one of the problems, because a lot of the things that they've done to change it, some of them have worked, some of them haven't. It really depends. Like I think up until Dynasty Warriors 9, the most different one before that was 6, and they changed entirely the way the combat system worked, and that didn't go down very well. So for 7, they reverted back.
Damned if you do.
Yeah, and it's one of those. I didn't mind it too much, but I definitely prefer the normal way of doing it. It'd be difficult for me to explain exactly how they changed it, because it's been so long since I played it
Yeah,
properly. But basically,
probably
the idea,
nuanced as well.
yeah, like in preview, particularly like Dynasty Warriors 3, 4, and 5, you had a kind of upper limit. So like once you got like the best weapon that a character could have, you had a maximum of like 4 square attacks that you could do.
Right.
And then the triangle attacks on top of that went up to 5. So you had up to 5 squares in triangle, or you had a 6 square instead of using triangle, and that was kind of your upper limit. And the way that they changed Dynasty Warriors 6 was there was a kind of bar that, as you attacked enemies, kept climbing. And so as you were running through, the higher the bar got, the more attacks in the chain you could do.
Right.
And the way to keep it high was to keep attacking people, and if you took damage, it went down. So you were in this constant kind of battle to keep it the right way, as opposed to it being like weapon based or
Like a
whatever, and having
multiplier. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, and it had score multipliers attached to it or whatever and stuff, if I remember rightly. And that was a completely different way of doing the combat. And I don't think that particularly worked very well, but that's partly because I come from preferring having that limited number of moves I can use, and it being about me using them well.
Yeah.
To combine them into big long chains of attacks and just beating the utter crap out of enemies, as opposed to the game making it easier for me to do that sort of thing.
Do you think that was to bring on newcomers or make it less punishing, or just
I think it was
change it? Yeah.
they wanted something to change to try something different. I'm not 100% sure. And
I'm
then
wondering how that Hyrule Warriors game did, because I'm sure it probably sold a lot just because it's on the Switch, and I imagine that might bring more people into the fold looking for that kind of
I think that's
game.
definitely one of the reasons why they were doing the licensed games, is for that,
Yeah.
looking for that. Well, if you want more of these, we make lots of them.
We've made 20,000 of them
Yeah.
already.
I'm not sure. I know it's definitely sold quite well, the Hyrule Warriors. Like it's well over
Yeah,
1 million
maybe.
anyway. I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah, I think maybe it was 2 million or something. That I
Yeah.
But it
saw,
also
but
came out with a
yeah.
sequel, which did well, right? Age of Calamity.
Yeah. Yeah. Again,
Oh yes, I think that was the one I was thinking of. Okay,
Yeah.
there's many of them. I was thinking of the Zelda one that came out. Was it last year?
Yeah, that was
Last
the
year?
sequel.
Yeah, there is two.
Okay,
of
that was a
those,
sequel to Hyrule. Oh, okay.
Hyrule Warriors came out in 2014 on the Wii U and the DS, and then was released on the
Yeah.
Switch later.
I meant the Age of
Yeah.
Calamity one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apologies.
Yeah. But it's one of those, they must have done quite well to have gotten the sequel that's then sold pretty well as well. So
Yeah, yeah.
and
There's an audience.
yeah, and Age of Calamity as well, I'm sure it's quote unquote canon in the story. I'm not for
Oh, yeah, I
like Breath
forgot
of the
about
Wild
that.
or whatever. Yeah.
I think that's why a lot of people played it, you know? So.
That is very much probably deliberate.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, these Zelda people will have to play it now.
Oh god, yeah. Yeah. Because the Zelda story makes so much
Yeah.
sense and it's so riveting. Yeah.
But what's that? It's canon. God damn it. Oh, download it to my Switch. Hurry up.
Those Zelda fans. No comment.
Yeah. I mean, I've
Which
not
timeline
played
is it?
anywhere near enough of any Zelda, so I can't comment.
I've played. I've started playing a few more of them, and there is no story, so I don't know what people are talking about. And yeah, no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah, so that is Musou games.
Fair enough.
I mean, if you have any more questions, you can ask.
I'm still fascinated by the fact that there's a story of world history.
Yeah.
So, no more questions from me.
I have one question for you, as our resident Musou game fan and
sure.
expert. What time period would you like a game to be set in of this type?
Good question.
That is an excellent question. I have
Scotland.
no fucking idea.
Scottish history. Them battering the English. I'd buy that. I'd buy that.
I mean, I wouldn't complain about that. That's for sure. I don't know. It's strange because there's. It's hard to think of any other time periods that have as many, like kind of larger than life characters in that same way. That all of the people you think of, like in particular like European medieval history, most of them never met one another because they were happening kind of over so many centuries, as opposed to the beauty of the Three Kingdoms and the Sengoku era is it all happens pretty much at once.
Right.
Because the shit hits the fan everywhere and there's interesting stories all the way through, sort of thing. It doesn't really matter kind of which part of it you pick to focus on. There are interesting characters and interesting through lines that cross over them.
I mean, I guess I see it the other way, which is there are definitely interesting people in all kinds of time periods that we might not have learned about. So, like, you just need conflict, right? And then we can learn about, like, things that aren't in the pop culture yet. Or we could do what you said before, which was when you equated it with kind of like Knights of the Round.
Yeah, I mean, something like that would probably do. One element of conflict that you could probably draw quite a few different things from is something like the Crusades, different eras. You're right. There is definitely. It's not that there's a lack of people or that. It's that I don't know which one. Again, because like Rome
documented, but sufficiently to
like
because when you think of like Roman and Ottoman empires, they're just pretty much swept. Like, is there anyone left to tell those stories? That's the question. Yeah.
And then like the Romans and stuff are a good example again of a lot of the interesting characters that maybe would have fought don't meet. because it's spread over however long. Or we simply don't know about them because we don't have the the kind of histories written down for them in the same way. And what we really lack is we lack the person in the 1300s who wrote the romance version of events.
Yeah.
That really helps. So the answer, Adil, is I don't know.
That's fair.
I
Let's
think
stick with China and Japan.
Yeah, they've struck gold with China and Japan, so keep mining that, I guess.
I mean, fair.
Yeah.
I understand why you like Ghost of Tsushima so much now. Everything's contextualized.
I mean, that's just a very interesting game. That Ghost of Tsushima actually takes place not long before all of that stuff kicks off as well. That's one of the interesting things I learned when I was checking the dates on stuff and going, oh wait, that's actually
over there on that little
yeah.
island. And,
yeah.
And then giant enemy crabs are on the other
That's it. That's exactly it. They wipe out the Mongol ships and then they turn around and whack the shogun. And then it's just all hell breaks loose from there.
Musou games.
Musou games.
I've learned so much today.
Yeah. How are you doing for
Happy
beers
to help.
there, Lucy?
I'm ready for the next one. Finished.
Excellent.
that
What
one.
is your next one? Well, actually, did you? I didn't really have anything, I think, to add. I think.
No, yeah, I enjoyed it all the way through.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. It's very nice. I'm glad I had the second one in the fridge because I'll have to share that with someone because it's so interesting. But
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well.
yeah.
Or you could just be greedy.
Could do. When I say share, I mean you're getting like less than 20
Have
minutes.
a sip. One.
Yeah.
One.
Yeah, that is, and you'll never taste it ever again. So.
Oh, that was great. Can I have another? You're like, no.
Sorry. That's it. And they're literally special edition, so I can't do anything about it. Deya is my second beer. And this is called Routine Bites Hard, and it's a TIPA. I'm hoping it's not the one Ben had a couple weeks ago or whatever, but this is 10%. Routine Bites Hard. Flavor text? It just says this is a delicious, juicy triple IPA brewed in our house style, so short and sweet, I guess. Can't see any hops or malts or anything like that. Yeah, that's it really.
Fair enough.
10% tipper from there.
Nice. I've got another Czech beer. This one is a modern West Coast IPA from Motive. It's called Mechanics of Illusion. It's got a nice little optical illusion and a wrench.
That's like a blueprint.
Sorry, I said Czech. I meant Croatian. Oops. I don't know why I was thinking Czech earlier. Oh, probably because there's a word Czech, because Czech bottom of the can.
Okay.
So it's pale ale with dextrin, Munich, Azaka, Citrus, Columbus, and Antanum, which I'm not familiar with. Yeah. So it's just a nice little 5.5% West Coast IPA.
Adam still drinking that Pepsi over there?
Yep. It's as typically normal as you can get. Nothing interesting to report.
Hey, nothing wrong with a drink that doesn't change week to week. It's consistent. You like that in a beer as well, so.
Well, that's true. You do appreciate having those old reliables that you just know are going to happen. That you're going to open and drink, and it's going to taste exactly like you expect it to.
Okay. Sometimes you need consistency.
Looks like quite a frothy pour.
Yeah, probably not my best. But yeah, really good though. Like, even though it's a bad pour, it's got a really nice foamy, creamy like head. It's almost
Looks a
Oh,
little
it's a little
lighter.
bit cloudy. Yeah, it's probably darkish straw color. Smells just like tropical paradise. Like you can smell the sweetness from probably the alcohol and the strength on it, and it gives it that nice mango-y, and citrus, just great smell to it. Yeah,
Here's a
definitely a
question
lot,
for
a lot of mango, like ripe mango, like really good.
here's a question for idiots like me who don't understand anything about beer.
Hmm.
What difference does the head make?
Well, sometimes it just looks nice. Sometimes, I mean, like if you picture like a Guinness, and it's like that soft, creamy head. Like on the continent, they demand like half their beer is head. Like over here, less so. We're like, oh, just wipe all the head off the top. I think it brings more to the beer when there's like head, and it's like
Yeah, I mean, so much of taste is built on smell, and the head is literally the carbonation coming out of the beer, so it's bringing a lot of the smell out.
Right,
Um,
yeah,
so
that makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah,
so but there's also the texture. So like on a Guinness, the head doesn't disappear really. So every sip, you get a bit of the
yeah,
creamy head, and then the less thick liquid each time you sip. For
yeah,
something like this, where like for example, my beer, I just poured it poorly, so you could see the head poured to there and is now sort of dropped down. So I've just sort of gotten rid of some bubbles by accident. But
yeah.
it's now pretty stable here, and so it's the same idea. Some, I mean, a lot of beers sort of pour with like a finger of head or something. But when you get a big thick head, it's either because you poured it poorly, in which case you're going to have less carbonation in the liquid, but you're going to get a lot more of the taste off the top. So, like, especially if you're tasting a beer, I think pouring with a bit of extra head isn't a bad thing because you're getting, like I
yeah.
said, it's bringing those scents out.
Yeah, and sometimes it's like when you see a head with like massive bubbles, it's usually like I'm probably drinking a lower quality beer right now. There's
Yeah.
like this tiny bubbles, like very, it's like ocean foam almost, and it's like I can probably tell that this is quite a decent quality beer. But yeah, just tasting it, all those tropical fruits just follow through
Nice.
completely. Getting a bit of that sweetness, a bit of that. So like not burn, but like that heat from the alcohol, so you can tell it's a stronger beer. I think that was just with the sweetness, you can definitely tell there's like a bit of a punch behind it, but
Hmm.
it's still it's not overly sweet. It's tapered well with that, with the fruitiness. Is there any bitterness? Um, Slightly, not too much. I mean, for most Deya beers, you're not getting a lot of bitterness anyway. That they are packing a lot of fruit in it, and they are fruit bombs, so to speak. But this is really good. Like, I don't really, I do see them more nowadays, like Dare beers with stronger percentages and stuff like that. Like, I think on their website when I bought this last batch, they had like two triple IPAs. In fact, I got to see if this is because I'm sure one was like a collaboration with Verdant or something. So I don't know if this one is, or if it's just them.
Hmm.
Oh, this might just be then. Nobody else. But yeah, there was like I think there was one with like Verdant where there was that might have been another triple IPA, but I can't remember. But this is good. This is really good. I mean, you can definitely taste the alcohol, so it's not like you're just going to be smashing these back at a ridiculous pace. But this is a good end of the night bit where it's like, okay, this will probably be my last one. Have
Hmm.
something with a bit more flavor, a bit more punch, something to last. Yeah, it's good. Staya. Did anyone expect anything less?
Not really. No.
Uh, Have you
Um.
had your blueprint beer? Yeah.
Uh. The mechanics of illusion.
Hmm.
It's a lot more soft on the nose than your beer sounds. It's still got a bit of sweetness, a bit of like tropical, maybe a touch of citrus, kind of like you were saying earlier, like a clementine-y.
Mhm.
And then like almost the tropical is like a really weak non-acidic pineapple, like the sweeter side of a pineapple. Oh, that's nice and smooth.
Mm.
Yeah, so you can see the heads dropped even more so since last time. It's just got enough bubbles for it to feel the feel is a bit thicker because of the effervescence, making it feel
Mm.
like a more boisterous beer than I think it is. Yeah, again, it's got this like creaminess to it with that light citrus, slightly tropical, and then it gives way to there's the sweetness almost fades a bit aspartame-y, but
Okay.
not in a strong way. Just I don't know where that's coming from, and then it's
Mm.
got a lovely like just hoppy bitterness, not piney really, not really touching the citrus. It's not got like a grapefruity. It's just kind of a light bitter. Trying to figure out what that bitterness is. It's not one of our
Yeah.
usual suspects.
I
It's a
mean,
really
there was
light.
a
Hmm.
suspect hop in it, wasn't it? Well, not suspect, but one we've never heard of. What was that
Oh,
one?
oh, the antonym. Yeah,
Antonym. Let me
yeah.
Google that. I've never heard of that before. Antonym hop.
It's AHTANUM.
Mm.
I must know now as well.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, Antonym
it's
Hotel.
similar to
Oh,
Cascade or Amarillo, apparently.
okay.
So yeah, it's
Well, that'd be a bit more citrusy
yeah, so
in
citrus
that
and
sense. So,
floral with the addition of some piney or earth notes. Ah, yeah. So I would say not piney, but yeah, kind of an earthy bitterness.
okay. Yeah.
That's why I was struggling with. But yeah, as soon as I read the word
Hmm.
earthy, I was like, ah, yes. Mm. It's really smooth. I really like this. It's yeah. Now that I've got a little more used to that, to the beer, I'm getting a little more of that citra and sweetness. Um, sort of clementine tangerine but again, like way in the back corner. So you're just getting this hint of a sweet citrus. And I like the fact that the citrusy taste is going with the sweetness and is not really going with the bitterness. So we're not getting that sort
Hmm.
of more standard grapefruit flavor that sometimes you find in everything because they're so close. But when you
Yeah.
get sort of generic bitter and you get citrus taste, you're like, ah, yes, grapefruit. This is not evoking a grapefruit, but it is
Yeah.
citrusy and bitter. Yeah, this is really smooth. I really like this. I'm gonna just
Nice. Sounds alright.
yeah, I'm just gonna let that sit. Maybe I'll have other
Mm.
thoughts by the end, but I think it's just a nice smooth, like I said, slightly creamy in the texture, which for a
Mm-hmm.
5.5% West Coast IPAs is no easy feat.
You know, you've almost tricked me into thinking I would like some of these.
Uh,
I
You
think we could get you
describe
there.
enjoying them so much, and then I'm just like, no.
there's
We could
definitely a
get you
beer
there.
out there for you. Like
Yeah.
you should try those Vault City ones because they don't even taste like beer. They taste like amazing fruit, amazing.
Yeah. In Scotland as well. And they're in
Yeah,
Tesco now, so pretty
Yeah.
cheap.
You need to send me a picture of the labels so I can look for it now.
for sure. We can do that.
Yes.
As if I don't remember what the episode number is, but when we had Vault City on,
Yes.
he
That's
spoke
very
about
good.
how some people came to beers via Vault City. Like the usual path to sours is like Ponce is
Beer
like us,
journey,
where
what he
we go
said.
through all
Yeah.
the steps of beers and then finally make our peace with sours, which is kind of what we all like. That's like Ben, Lucy, and I. We all didn't really like sours in that big summer of sours, and by the end of it, we're like, oh, these are pretty great.
Mm-hmm.
But and it was like, oh, but like our sours are very unique because the way we make them. Like, there's a lot of people who really like our sours, and then started
Yeah,
like
just like,
trying
oh,
other
beers.
beers, but then there was people who were just like, nah, these don't taste like beers. That's why I like these ones.
Yeah,
But yeah, we'll
maybe.
give you a heads up. But let's
Maybe one day.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
have a firm commitment to the fact that there is a beer out there for everyone, in
I
the sense
agree.
that there's just so much variety that it can match almost any taste.
Yeah,
And
Yeah.
except maybe people who don't drink for religious reasons or
Yeah.
even allergies. I think like there's like alcohol-free
Oh,
beers
yes.
out there,
Yeah,
but the
exactly.
taste spectrum is obviously much more limited because of supply. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's now distracting from the point. Which
We'll
is
get you there, Adam. We'll
yeah.
get you there.
Lucy,
Mm.
let's pivot to you. What's this week in gaming been like for you?
Have I played anything? Oh, I finished Death's Door, which I think I want to table till next week till Ben gets back.
Because he
Because
played it as well.
yeah, he reviewed it for the
Yeah,
site
that's
as
right.
well,
Yeah,
and
of course. Yeah.
he really enjoyed it, and I think it's good. I have some complaints about it, but I think it's good overall. There's some frustrating things about it, so yeah, I might table that for next week if he wants to talk about it.
It'd
But
also
even then,
be
I'll just,
my last week before I go to the Canaders.
yeah.
Um,
I'm wondering if you've played anything this week because I can absolutely, yield my time because I've not. I played one game.
why don't you tell us about that one game? We can
I
do a
played.
couple short ones because I played one game as well. So
Yeah, I played the last. Is it called the last stop? I think it's just called Last Stop, which
on what platform?
Xbox. It's on Game Pass. It's the game by. Did any of you play Virginia? That game?
Virginia's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's a kind of like a. It's a first-person
Thriller narrative.
Yeah, I guess you call it a thriller, narrative thriller. Yeah, that's probably a good way to describe it. It's very interactive, like kind of less mechanics than Telltale,
Yeah.
kind of thing. And this seems like, I mean, I remember reading like interviews with the developer. They're saying, "Oh, we might make a spiritual successor to Virginia," which was about, I think it was two female women of color in like the police department over in probably Virginia in America. I think they were tracking down like a disappearance of a kid or something
It
like
was
that.
a FBI agent in a missing
Yeah.
persons case, I think.
And it very, very like, very purposeful, framing of like camera shots, very the cinematography was very purposeful, very directed. It used to do like these jump cuts where it was like, okay, you're in the back of a police car, and then all of a sudden you're at this crime scene, and there was no voice acting. Somewhat stilted, but they were going for that kind of thing. Whereas the last stop, I think they're saying that they wanted to do like a spiritual successor to that, but they didn't in the end. They were like, we cannot be the, get pigeonholed into that kind of.
Right.
We only make these silent, artsy games. The last stop is very much a not antithesis to that, but it's very different in the fact that this is voice acted. This is these characters. It also goes into like kind of supernatural alien thing, like kind of what Virginia did, but not to. I guess even more of an extent, actually.
So,
but,
what's the premise?
The premise is there's three different arching stories, and they sort of like cross with one another at a certain point.
Where is
they don't
it
completely interject,
right?
But there is like narrative threads which sometimes characters pop up in each other's chapters and stuff like that.
So Virginia was in Cold War Virginia.
Okay.
Is this also a period piece?
Yeah, in the fact that 21st century Britain is a period piece, I
Ah,
guess.
okay. So
Yeah, it's very
Careful, Brie.
British. It's probably the most British game I've played. It's very twee, and it's very British in its sensibilities, its references. It's sort of like set on like is it a fictional version? I'm not very too versed in like London geography, but it's basically on the Piccadilly line, like all these
Oh,
different
okay.
characters.
Oh, hence last
And
stop.
yeah, and yeah, it's very British. It's the most British game I've ever played, and it's like probably not a big Britain's got its problems, very much so. Probably not nationalist Britain, but it's very good in the sense that it's like, yes, this is probably the most authentic British experience, kind of the voice acting, the
Right.
references, it, and I think that's what carried me through. It's got an interesting structure in that you have these three different storylines. Some of them are quite different in tone. Like there's one is like this ex-army veteran who's like now like a a MI6 agent or something like that, and
Right.
it's like dealing with her family and her marriage and her being unfaithful and stuff like that. And there's this other story where it's this guy and his daughter, and he switches body with Freaky Friday style with this, very fit but gormless young man from Yorkshire. And there's the last one, which was probably my least favorite of that, is like this group of teenagers who happen across this very mysterious alien man. But uh, the way that they structure it is like, okay, you can pick it right from the bat. You can pick any of these three acts to start.
Right.
So you jump into that storyline, and they're all separated into 6 acts, each of these stories, with the final act culminating with where all the characters meet. And it's like, oh, I can pick this act with the Freaky Friday thing. But once that act is done, it's like, oh, okay, I have to go through the other acts with these 2 other characters. And
Ah, I
then
see.
after those are done, you can go in you can pick, oh, I want to start with the teenagers first. And then you go through that, and it's like, you have to play each of the acts, but it's like you can do them in any order. And I really like that because, like, some of the acts were like, I have to find out what's next. I want to jump right back into this story, whereas the others can go on like the back burner, and
Right.
I'll get to those later. So I really liked that kind of like structure to it. But in terms of gameplay, it's very there's nothing to it. Like I think I saw some reviews where it's like it doesn't even matter if you press the buttons or not. So it's like that kind of semblance of control and stuff like that. It's like I gauge that going in.
Yeah.
It's only like really until like the last choice in like the last chapter, where it's like, okay, there might be I have some autonomy over this, but it's like really you're just on
Rails.
you're just enjoying the story. You'd have no like kind of like influence over where these characters go, and I'm okay with that. It's like this is very much the kind of thing where it's like, I don't want to watch a film. I don't want to watch, a series of television. I want to feel like I'm actually doing something. I want to play a game, but it's like, it's not too taxing,
Right.
but it's still engaging. And this is that. So if
It
you
sounds
expect
like
to have like some kind of influence on the story, this isn't that game for you. Even like the Telltale games are more video gamey and more choice driven. So
Yeah. So, going on review roundup, um, Dr. Peppermill, with 8.5 hours on record, said, "Usually I like walking sims with good story, but the gameplay on this one is close to zero. Dialogue choices don't make any difference. It's completely linear story that can be watched on YouTube. Characters are well developed, but the story is lame and fixed camera is annoying. It's only 5 to 6 hours. I have 8 because I decided to get all achievements after the end. Buy only on sale." I think that's a good thing to know going in, that
yeah,
that
no,
there are
going in.
choices that are window dressing, because I think that's a feel bad in modern gaming.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, like
But
I
like, if
think
you
that's
know that's
also
the
how well
case,
you gel with the story as well.
yeah,
Because like, I don't think people come to these kind of games for the gameplay mechanics or even choice over the story necessarily.
yeah,
I thought the stories were like somewhere like Virginia. It was like, where is this ending up? What is going on? This seems, a bit atonal and not in the same direction as I expected. Like most of those stories to go with the very supernatural. I mean, I'm not spoiling anything. It starts with like this gateway to another universe or something like that. So I'm not really spoiling anything. It's going to be like
Yeah.
supernatural in tone eventually. And it's like this Freaky Friday things. It's like, okay, these two people switch bodies. Something
yeah,
weird's going on. But I really like the characters. I think the voice acting's terrific. Just like the the small personal stories, like seeing this woman like being more tied to her job rather than her marriage, and how she deals with that, and how she deals with her father who she's at odds with, and how this guy, and he's a single dad, and he has you know his daughter who probably knows, still a kid, but probably knows that it's just him and her, and like he has this heart condition, and she probably knows, like, well, this could go south very quickly. It's just those like little human stories which bring the game to life, and it looks good, and it has that same kind of like cinematography and like direction, and wide shots and panning the camera. It just makes it really engaging. So
yeah. That sounds
it
like
was
my
good.
kind of jam.
It's on Game Pass. It's the perfect Game Pass game.
Is it on PC Game Pass or just
I don't know.
You played it on the
On the
former
box of the
box? Yeah,
X, yeah.
I'll check it out.
Uh, there's nowadays there's more parity between the PC and Xbox Game Pass, so I'd imagine so.
What is it called? Last
It's
Stop.
definitely on cloud. I know that because I started it on my phone and I was like, let me get this on the big screen because this
Oh
looks
yeah,
good.
it's new.
Hmm.
Oh man, there's some fun new things going on. Like the Ascent is a game I've been meaning to look at if I
Yeah,
get the
I
time.
tried to start it today. I looked at the Digital Foundry review, and they were like, "This takes 2 minutes to load on Xbox," and I was like, "Okay, I'll download it on PC." Takes 2 minutes to load on my PC, so it's just like, hmm, that was pointless. Wait
Hmm.
till it's optimized more, So
Yeah, it's hard to tell when things get optimized in other ways.
hmm.
Raji, an ancient epic. I've never heard of this game.
I started that. It's interesting. I started it today, literally.
Hmm.
Seems okay. It's sort of like, this is very sad that this is the only parallel that I can draw, but it's like that Assassin's Creed side-scrolling
Oh, I fucking love those
game.
games.
Yeah, I thought those were good.
India,
And,
Russia, China.
and those,
Yeah, yeah.
I never played the Russian one, but I played the Chinese and Indian one. Um, yeah, it's sort of like that because it's drawing on like Hindu
Yeah.
mythology and stuff like that, and it's like it's sad that this is the only parallel that we have to draw, like with games with you know drawing on that
Non-Western.
mythology.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it's the combat seems a bit slow, but it seems varied, and the platforming seems okay. But I think the whole wrapping around it, and I think the developers on this game like adopted like 100 stray dogs or something like that, so they have my thumbs up. So
Oh, wow.
yeah,
And
started
Hades
that
is
today, but
coming to Game Pass. Damn.
everything's coming to Game Pass. You're coming to Game Pass.
Wow, I'm already on Game Pass. That's
Adam's
why they
coming.
call me Project Wingman.
Everything's coming.
Let's so
Yeah, that's pretty much
I mean
all.
you've kind of sold me on game that I've forgotten the
Last
name of
last
now.
stop.
Last Stop. I was like,
Yeah,
you've
just
sold me on that thing that I can't remember. So
it's one of those where it's like if you start playing it, it's like you'll binge it probably in one or two settings because it's just so easy just to sit back and just press a few buttons, and the stories in the characters and the voice acting is excellent. So it's like it's engaging enough. It's like I could watch is it Loki or something like that on
Yeah.
whatever. Or I could play one chapter of The Last Stop, because the chapter's probably like, what, 20 minutes long? Some of them quite short, so it's like,
Right.
yeah.
Neat. Oh, it's a pity that no.
And the UI is sort of like Untitled Goose Game, which is very much like English signage.
Right.
Very good.
Excellent. Well, I'll talk briefly about the game I played.
Yeah.
And then we can mosey off for another week. I played Black Skylands, which is made by Hungry Couch Games and published by Tiny Build, who provided the code. Hungry Couch did what did they do? Why am I lost on what they did?
It's something.
So I don't like how Steam, if the
Yeah,
dev
they don't
doesn't
serve the
have, like, they have a link on the Steam page, and if the dev doesn't have their own page, it just goes to the publisher.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh, they did that game? No, that's just a Tiny Build game. I had this looked up before, and now I can't remember.
Well, so whilst you figure that out, I'm going to nip to the loo.
Fair enough. Maybe this is their first game. That can't be right. I'm sure they did another thing, but I don't. Weird. Maybe it is their only game. Oh yeah, debut open world skypunk game. Yes, so Black Skylands is a pixely top-down sandbox open world flying ship game. It's a build your skyship and explore the open world, fight factions of pirates and monsters, claim your territory by foot or by your flying vessel. You're the captain, the sky is the limit in the skypunk open world action adventure. It came out last week.
Handbrake turn.
Sorry?
I was going to say, that felt like a bit of a handbrake turn with, use the skyship, claim your territory by foot. Like, what?
Yeah.
So, what about my skyship?
Yeah, well, that's actually a good sort of segues into one of the things. So like, it starts with a lot of exposition. Well, yeah, so basically there's two ways of navigating the world. One is when you're on your ship and you're flying to floating islands, and then you can hop off your ship and go on the islands to like grab resources or liberate the island of bad people or finish a quest, whether it's a side quest or the main storyline. But like on the way, you're gonna, like, there are asteroids floating around, and if you shoot them with your ship guns, they sometimes break and give you asteroid coal, which is what you need to like smelt things in the crafting system.
Yeah.
But yeah, especially in the beginning of the game, it's mostly your ship is this kind of slow, shitty ship, and like small things will attack you, and you basically have attack with my left guns and attack with my right guns, and you have like pivot guns from 45 degrees angles forward to 90 degrees to 45 back, and you're just kind of like, but your cannons have kickback, so like if you just shoot with one, you kind of half spin, so then you're kind of moving around. You have to use your pivot and like throttle a bit to keep aiming at a thing.
That makes it a bit more challenging than just click fire.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's where the depth of the game is. I played 2 hours on the stream, and it's clearly the setup hours, because like whole bunch of plot. Basically, you're part of there's a weird cloud that monsters come out of, and then your dad tried to figure out, when you on your 11th birthday came home and brought a thing to show the elders that would solve the problem of the weird monsters, and then the thing attacked people, and then 7 years later everyone's in disarray, and you're now the yeah, so basically a guy who was ostensibly on your side got shot in the scuffle with the monster, and then in the intervening 7 years has become a pirate faction that's sort of putting pressure on your people, who basically have the fathership, which your father pilots. Look, the writing isn't all great. But like it's this giant. It's basically your home base,
Yeah.
and like the flash forward after that plot exposition is like the pirates just blew up your ship, and you have to now remake all the things like the armory and the factory and some gardens. So you can like grow cotton and get scrap material to make
Yeah.
a armor so that you don't die as easily. And mostly the gameplay loop in the first couple hours is like follow the plot or explore, and like on your map there'll be islands that have like resource nodes. It's like there is somewhere on this island there is wood or stone or iron, and you just like go there, grab the stuff, and then there's a nice like GTA gang style mechanic where you can the first island you go to you liberate, and then they tell you like at some point this might get attacked and you'll have to rush back and free it up, otherwise you'll lose popular supporters and you get perks for the people you support. And so after the first sort of island you have 10 people that you have liberated as a resource, and you can either get a flashlight for 5, or for 10 you can have bonus backstabs damage. Which
right.
if you can do, it's not really a stealthy game, but if you can time it right, because it's just a top down, so the mobs will have their own routes, so as long as you're not fighting like 5 at a time, you can kind of just pick people off from behind. But if once that island gets attacked, if you don't free them, you'll lose that perk. So you lose the perk for the. So I lost the perk for the duration of the skirmish with the people attacking their island, because I didn't have the 10 supporters because they were under attack or whatever. So that's a nice little touch.
That makes a bit more sense as opposed to, oh good, you've liberated 10 people, now consume them for the bonus. Which is sort of how it sounded.
Well, I really but
Why
it
are
is
these pirates opposing this helpful, beautiful savior of the world who consumes people for stat bonuses? I mean, it makes no sense.
But I mean, it also still doesn't make that much sense, because like if I didn't defend the place, I would somehow not remember how to backstab. Right? But
suddenly my knife feels awful dull.
Yeah, and so like you've got a dive roll, you've got a hook shot. So the way you kind of move around and like hop onto boats and stuff is you've got a grappling hook, which is like
of course, yeah,
right shoulder button.
You're
everyone has
explaining
a grappling hook.
Yeah.
You have a shot in it.
Yeah, I have. It's sometimes hard to tell what you can hook shot onto. The aim is a little less tight than I would want it to be. It's still in early access, though. Is that true? Am I making that up?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So it came out in early access.
So
on the 9th.
They'll tighten that up and as they develop, hopefully.
Yeah, and I really the world building is really good, especially the fact that you're not actually on the world, you're just on these floating islands above the world. I'm just curious about how the rest of the plot goes. I'm also, it seems like the scale of the game might be a lot bigger than it seems, because like you open up your map and you can only zoom out so much, but just based on how much of the map
there's more. Yeah.
Well, how much of the map I've seen and how much plot there's been, it's either good, like there's no way anything could get resolved, but plus they've like mentioned other places, so I think it'll just slowly get bigger. Also because again, like that like mechanic of you've liberated an island, now you have to come rush back to defend it. Wouldn't make sense if the map was this big, right? Then it's like, okay, I did that. Versus, oh, I'm all the way over here on the other side of the world trying to like. Plus, also the map doesn't have the cloud where the monsters are, which is like a plot point. So, I'm liking it.
Yeah.
It's got a nice sense of humor. Like you go to rescue your brother, and you find out like in the early times before the time skip, and your brother like went to an island where training was happening, and he hid in a box and like solid snaked his way through the course before any of the people who were there to stop him from running it could stop him, and then he got. And so he almost broke the record, but then he got stuck in the box, so couldn't finish. And you've been looking for him, so then you have to go through the course, and it teaches you dodging, etc.
Yeah.
But it also teaches you that people, because like basically you can hold up one box at a time, and your ship starts with a 15 storage spaces, so you can just drop something in the hold. And any island that has a warehouse in it, they're all connected, and you've basically got infinite space in the warehouse. I think it says 1,000, but some screens it says infinite, so I don't know. But I suspect you'll never really get to 1,000 things. And so it's nice because if you go to one of those islands that has like not a lot of like the non-violent islands, they'll probably have a warehouse spot in it, which case you can just dump things into it and not have to ferry everything back and forth. But you can only and also like once like I've just unlocked ship upgrades, so you could presumably get better weapons, better speed, and also more storage space. Because really, like part of the reason why I didn't get that far in the plot is because and so I'm like, I will get on the way. There's an island with like 7 resources. I'll go get those. Oh, now I'm full halfway through this plot. I guess I'll go back to the father ship to dump the things and then go back and finish the plot.
Yeah. Classic video gamer holder.
Yeah. Well, because I don't know how easy this
stuff
is to get. What do you mean
you want me to use my precious rocks? No.
But yeah, it seems like everything is usable really head on. And you kind of already, it's very telling. Like once you get your tablet, it's like, oh, you don't have any armor. Then you open the armory and it's like, you need exactly these things. Cool. It gives you like a lot of front-loaded recipes, and like when you go to build a thing, it shows you like 5 buildings that are way like further on in the plot than you're at, right? But it tells you exactly what. So you can kind of like, if you are a miser like me, you can kind of pre-store some stuff.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay, I know in general I need like 15 scrap metal for the things I know about. So I'm just going to keep a track of scrap metal, or take the long road so I can be attacked by things, so I can hopefully get scrap metal out of them, you know. So the crafting is pretty straightforward, but interesting so far. It doesn't feel like it's a grind. It feels kind of like I'm gathering resources, and they're pretty aplenty. Like if I tried to scream through the plot, I wouldn't have enough. But any mild meanderings will get me there.
Yeah. It's good when games actually signpost that to you a little better and go, there's all this stuff to collect. You're gonna want to collect it. As opposed to a lot of games where it's like, here's some broken plates. Like, you can pick them up. But why?
Yeah.
I'll do it anyway because I have to.
Yeah, so there's no there's no like junk items. Enemies either drop ammo. So what I like is like you can carry up to 3 guns, and like your starter pistol you have infinite ammo on. So but obviously it doesn't do a lot of damage. And like I just made a sniper rifle, which is much better for my playstyle in this type of games. Shotgun was great for like a boss battle because I couldn't get away from him anyway, so it was just doing front-loaded damage. And then you've got like a rifle, an automatic rifle, and an SMG, I think are the ones that I haven't made the last 2. But like when you break pots, there'll be some ammo. When you kill guys, what's really interesting is if you kill an enemy with a melee, whether it is a hook shot or your little dagger axe thing, they will drop ammo. Might not be the ammo for the gun you're using, but they will drop ammo, which encourages a play style of not just picking them off, because
you run out of ammo if you do.
Yeah. And then like the enemies are a bit bullet spongy anyway, so like like I said, the only way to one shot someone is to backstab them, in which case it's a melee, and with that perk. And I assume later in the game that won't work on most enemies, but right now it's like, okay, well they're going to drop ammo then. Right, because I've killed them. The last hit was a melee, right? And so it's a nice way of like, hey, they turned around on me. I'll shoot them, but I'm also close enough to them that I can probably swipe them for the last hit or whatever. But mostly it's like my play pattern can be try and backstab them, and if I don't, like run and gun them. But because I have if I time it right, I know I will get some ammo in this group of enemies, because I'll kill at least one of them. Even if when I'm shooting at them and they're shooting at me, I'm never going to finish them with a melee. I know that I can kind of creep up on at least one of these guys and then get some ammo. It also encourages switching of the guns because I might not get the right ammo.
Yeah, and you also feel like you're always gaining out of the encounters, as opposed to I've used all of my ammo and only got this lousy piece of scrap metal.
Oh, I mean, most of the time
Yeah.
you get nothing from these guys. The guys don't really drop resources outside of ammo, but
Yeah.
it's like twin stick,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
top down twin stick,
Okay.
and I'm not great at that, so it took me a while to get
Yeah.
used to that
How are you gonna
mechanic.
play the Ascent?
Hmm?
How are you gonna play the Ascent?
I'm not. Apparently, it's garbage.
I just said it runs poorly.
Yeah. I mean,
It
it's
took
more of
more
a
than 10 seconds to load the garbage.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think for
Yeah.
me, it's yeah, just I haven't played one of these in a while, and it took me a while to
Mhm.
get a bit to get used to just how twitchy the aim is, for example.
Yeah.
So I think the aim is twitchier than your movement, and so I feel like,
Mm.
and like the other thing is the other type of combat you have is on the ships where you don't aim really. You can just hit a button to chunk forward or back the guns.
So it's fixed angles.
Yeah, you're
as
fixed
opposed
angles, and
to-
you're
yeah.
either like 45 degrees forward, maybe 30, but some angle forward, or straight out, or that same angle
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
And so that aiming is about spinning your ship to kind of you shoot a spread of like 3 shots, so you just kind of have to clip them, but ideally you hit them with more than one. But again, it spins you about, so like combat on the ship is very different, and I think, from what I gather, I think the on ground stuff will matter less later. Because it's going to be more like build a fancy ship, blow people out of the water. Like, for example, I realized belatedly that like when there was a group of enemies around what's essentially a treasure chest, like on like I want to say the shore, but obviously it's not the shore. It's just the edge of a precipice because it's floating in the sky. But like the metaphorical shore
sky
of this
coast.
floating island, right? And I was like, oh, I just shot, and I was like, oh, I hit them with my ship guns, and like 2 shots of the ship guns, these guys are fucking gone. I didn't need to like hook shot on the island and fight these guys. I could just bomb them essentially. Oh, that changes everything, right? It's only when you have to go deeper into the islands that you have to care about that combat.
Aadil has unlocked carpet bombing.
Yeah, exactly.
New strategy pioneered by the British. Way. Let's
Yes.
do this.
So anyway, so what I was mentioning the humor. So the box thing, just to tag back on that tangent. You pick up your brother who's in a box and you put him in the hold of your ship and you go away. And it turns out that's just the way you transport people in the game, because I had a side quest where I saved a blind man on a kind of rougher fight island, and he's like, if you can take me to Turtletown, that'd be great, but until then, I'll just sit in this box. And then you like grab the guy, and the thing is, I put the guy in my hold, and then I was like, oh, actually, that's a little far away. I'll just keep doing the main plot for a while. So there's just this blind man in a box in my ship for God knows how many hours.
He's
Great.
fine.
Yeah. But like I enjoy that. Like that's a great way to do some easy mechanics for like escort quests without the baggage of escort quests, but also good humor about it. It's like, oh well, we'll just treat this as an item. But then yeah, so I like the humor. I like the writing a lot. The graphics are cool. The sound is really good. I'm mostly curious because like the blurb makes it sound like the whole point is like the sky is the limit in the skypunk open world action adventure. So I think the point is like make a new ship, go explore, and maybe the plot will be less linear moving forward, which I hope, because like I hope they haven't fallen into the trap of like especially early Assassin's Creeds, but in general the like here's an open world, but also here is the path, the linear path that you need to take to get through the game.
Yeah. Look at this beautiful open world. You can't see the invisible walls.
Yeah.
Until you slam into them, which is that's exactly what I did in Assassin's Creed 1. Well, doof.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so I really like it so far. In fact, for the first time, I think since I started, first looks on Tuesdays, I was having internet issues, but also realized that like the last few fights I was having, I wasn't an online. Hey, thanks for No History Here Gaming for the raid.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Welcome,
Yeah.
Raiders.
We
We are
love
talking
stationery here.
about.
Samurai Warriors.
Yeah, we missed Samurai. We're now talking about Black Skylands.
I mean, I can talk about Samurai Warriors more if you want.
Right.
We can go another hour.
Yeah. So right. So Black Skylands. What was I saying? I've totally lost my train of thought.
Carpet bombing.
Yeah, we did the carpet bombing. We need to do more carpet bombing. Really. No.
Smuggling a blind old man in your hold.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to
Oh yeah.
right to it being more open and less sort of tied to the linear plot, basically. And I really like the top down works really well. The flavors there, you get a solid understanding of the main players in the like first hour, but it's a bit plot heavy. But I basically, yeah, I just want to. Oh yeah, it was the first time I've streamed a game, ended it because I was like, oh, I'm like sucking at this combat. I'm no longer being engaged streamer Aadil. I'll just say goodnight, and then like grabbed a bite, and then came back and just opened the game back up and started playing again. Like usually after a couple hours of streaming a game, I'm like, I've had my fill for that. But actually, Black Skylands is yeah, it was really fun and I really liked it. I just realized that like it had been almost a full 2 hours and I wasn't actually speaking at the camera, but it wasn't. Usually I'm like, it's been 2 hours, done. This was like, oh, I want to play more of this. I want to see what I can do. I want to see if I can make can I get a really small fast ship and like zoom between and like just skip attacks through people, or can I get like a giant, like galaxy class type nonsense ship that's just got a bunch of guns and just be like thump 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 and just shoot everything like a Star Destroyer and not worry about it. So I'm really curious about what the late game of Black Skylands is like, and obviously it's an early access game, so who knows what will change. But yeah, I'm liking it a lot.
That's good.
Yeah,
Sounds.
I hope it
Looks
goes that way.
interesting. I love the art, the pixel art. So.
Yeah, it's one of those as well. You do hope that once it's kind of giving you the kind of tutorializing of these are the sorts of things that you'll be building on your ship to make it better. Now go. Yeah, I do hope it gives you that opportunity. And it's
Yeah, I
maybe
mean
not too much further down the line, hopefully.
yeah, I mean it's interesting because like the starter the island that you're on, which is a ship because everything is a ship, is like gets carpet bombed and you have to rebuild it. But like I said, it front loads like you've got your workshop, your armory, your garden, factories, and then you have a ranch as well, which you can like raise animals, which I haven't really gotten into because I don't know where to buy animals to breed them. But like, because that I'm not that far into the game, so I'm like, it seems quite in depth, and I don't know what the food side is. Like, for example, the first set of seeds you get when you start a garden is cabbage. So like, I have a box of cabbage to put next to my box of blind man in my hold. And I don't know what to do with it because at no point do you have to eat in this game, so I don't know what the cabbage does.
Are you sure the old man doesn't need to eat?
If he does, he hasn't told me. Can you imagine if the game was like super like, no, you need to feed and water your people in boxes, and then so you're like, I go to Turtle Town, which is where he wants to go, and like grab the box of the blind man, put it down, and just a corpse fumbles out. It's like, this guy wanted to come here. Anyone will pay me for transporting this dead blind man?
Yeah.
He's just
Hello,
been
post
slowly
office. I have
starving
your skeleton that you wanted. Where is my reward?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh no.
But yeah, so it's got a lot of deep stats. Also, like you can definitely go like I did. I freed a couple islands instead of doing the main plot just to see how it went. And because that would theoretically get me more people resources to get perks. But also, as soon as I got my second island, my first island got attacked. I'm like, I wonder if that was a triggered event. But the thing that kind of frustrated me is a lot of these floating islands, they have like a dotted line to show you their area of influence or whatever, and so it's like, oh, so like the main plot, Big Island, I fought through to get to save my brother a second time 7 years later. I fought all the guys. I didn't see any enemies, but I didn't. But the island still shows up as an unliberated, and that's because there might be a spot not reachable on the path of walking on that island because there's a stone wall and you have to like fly your skyship around to get at it. There's some enemies somewhere in there, and you have to find them, and it becomes kind of annoying and hunted pecky. And so like this second area I went to was basically like an archipelago of like a big island with like 8 to 10 small islands on them, and I like killed everyone on the big island, and it was like, so there, it doesn't say they're liberated. And sure enough, there was like a couple guys on these small tiny islands I had to kill, and then I got fireworks and they said, you've liberated this island. But the last person was on the main island, but at the very top, after like 7 feet of solid rock, then there was a little spot and there was just a guy standing there. And it was like, okay, you guys designed this.
Liberated.
Yeah, but oh no, he was an oppressor. I had to kill him dead, with my sniper rifle or my backstabbing hook shot. But like, yeah, it was just kind of.
That's a shame. You mean you didn't carpet bomb him? That's what I would have done.
I mean,
so look, one guy holding back my progress. Kill him.
Well, so I couldn't actually, because it was like I parked my ship and there was some land, and then when I walked 2 paces, it like showed that there was actually a break. It was just like almost like a land bridge on the edge, and then I had to jump off and then hook shot to another piece of land, and that's where the guy was. So that's like the main platforming in the game is navigating these islands via hook shotting between spaces and trying to line it up. And so like jump hook shotting is a main mechanic, and if you mistime it, you're like, turn around, hook shot before you die. Because basically, if you can't recover yourself or you die, you've got a magic moth which will whisk you back to your ship one time. You have like 1 life save or in the early game, and then if it happens again, it'll take you to the last bed you slept in, which is usually on the father ship. And what really annoys me is on one of the early islands, I found a bed and I kept it in the hold, and then I went to a new plot island and I just slapped it on basically the deck, and then took a nap for 8 hours before actually starting content. That way it would stay over there. And then I followed the plot and kind of lost track of the bed, and I don't know, it's somewhere in the world, but because I went back, the plot made me sleep at home again. I can't just die twice to go back to that spot. So there's and it's like, I'm not going to go to some random island I think the plot was at to look for a bed, but also I haven't unlocked crafting a bed, and it was very useful to like move my save point essentially, right?
Yeah. That would be a very handy thing for you not to have lost.
Yeah.
Well, you could just take your bed with you in your inventory.
I mean, so you don't have an onboard inventory. You can only hold one thing at a time, like holding a crate in front of you. It also means you can't dive roll when you're holding a thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which means grabbing resources that are like platformy away isn't as straightforward, because you're like, oh, I had to jump dive roll twice to get to this place where this resource is. But if I'm holding the resource, I can't jump hook shot. So that means I need to find a shorter spot to
opportunity cost.
Yeah. So it's like I said, there's a lot of promise. It's just like a little kludgy on the hook shotting and some of the combat, but also I'm not known as a twin stick top down person of skill and prowess. But yeah, I really like it, and I think it's a very good, especially in these early hours. Like I said, I've only played 2. I really like what it's doing, and like the promise of these. Like, you also like get mod boxes which unlock perks for your guns, and so you can upgrade your guns, and like there's just a lot of nice loops and upgrade mechanics and crafting that seems like you could pick this up and play like, oh, I'll just go to that island which has 3 resources and just have to fight whoever's there and fight guys on the way and maybe get some scrap metal or some stuff to smelt, and you could probably do it on your own pace, and so to treat it like a sort of like a aggressive floating Stardew Valley with more pointedness on what you were doing. But given that you like have all these things to build, I'm just curious how much of that crafting system you need to engage with versus how much you might want.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that's Black Skylands. I'm super interested in it. Yeah, I'm still into it even after streaming it, which, like I said, sometimes doesn't happen, or at least it's like, oh,
Yeah.
I'll come back to this, and then I don't come back to it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean that's a good sign.
You're starting to sell it to me. I think that's a perfect quote for the box, like Stardew Valley, but with more bombs.
I mean, it's not like a super like wanderer. There's no romance. Like the thing, it's more. I was thinking like the Stardew Valley that is your farm.
Yeah.
And the like your starter farm and like the one mine beside it. It's like the idea of like it's combat and some crafting and you're making your base.
Yeah.
And then let's just pretend that all the interesting, intricate relationships aren't there.
Yeah, Stardew Valley with
warfare.
cannons.
But yeah, so that's Black Skylands. Super, yeah. I think it's
sounds like fun.
Yeah, it's also like it's 15 quid on early access right now. I think. Oh, although if you buy it and wait. If you buy it and Graveyard Keeper, no, never mind. I was gonna say a thing because now bundles Steam like discounts for you if you have one of the games. So then I was like,
it's still offering me that. Hold on, do I have Graveyard Keeper? Maybe, yeah, maybe that's why.
Yeah, it was usually 9 quid or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So
it seems like a Graveyard Keeper. Is it made by the same people?
No, I mean I think it's a tiny build, but yeah, it's tiny build. But Lazy Bear Games made Graveyard Keeper.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah,
but
so
I definitely see the similarities.
Yeah. So Hunger Couch Games, this is they were founded in 2019. This is their inaugural game.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Super great. I recommend it. And it, like I said, like there's a few buggy things. One time when I left, like you get on your ship and you're like undock essentially, and then your ship sort of floats out for a bit and then you can fly. And like the worst bug I had in this early access game was I sat there and my throttles didn't work back or forward. It was just like, you left. Do you want to come back? I mean, you can't do anything else. I guess you jump off and plummet to your death. But I just saved, left, came back in, and it worked fine. Like
so pretty stable build.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not too bad as bugs go.
Yeah.
I don't mind those ones that don't interfere too badly when it's just quit out and load back in exactly where you were, but now your controls work.
Yeah,
that does help.
So that's the only game I had. Did you have another thing you want to talk about, Lucy, or shall we talk about beers?
One last thing.
Yeah.
I pre-ordered that Playdate.
Oh, you pre-ordered the Playdate?
Yeah, pre-orders went live today, and it was a very smooth process. Unlike most tech things, I don't know if that's because of the demand, and the website didn't go down. To be honest, I got in there pretty early. I think they went live at about 6 p.m. BST where we are. So, but yeah, smooth, easy process. So they take the money up front, but you can cancel at any time.
If people didn't know what the Playdate was, can you give like a quick Playdate primer?
It's a yellow Game Boy that you crank.
That you crank?
You crank it.
It's how big are the games? 1 bit or something?
Yeah, just like that I do. Yeah, something like that. 1 bit. I don't think the screen's backlit, so very Game Boy. Yeah,
you're gonna have to get yourself one of those big things with a magnifying glass.
Yes.
The lights.
I just permanently sit under a lamp or something like that. But yeah, it's a new gaming
platform.
You can call it platform, but it's very much, you'll know if you want this. It's very niche. They have names like if these names ring a bell to you, like Zach Gage, Lucas Pope, people like that making, small, very small indie projects for it. If you know those names, you'll know if this thing is for you. If you're very much, I could play some very short-lived, very niche, experimental games on this like 1-bit platform where you use a crank. It just seems like a bed of creativity.
Yeah,
For I
it's
don't know
got
how long that'll last. It may be a something that doesn't last that long, something that's just a novelty, but hey, my born.
I mean,
I love
what
my
else are you gonna do
novelty.
with money, right?
Just waste it.
Yeah,
That's how I like to use it.
yeah. I think the
Throw it
the
away.
the Playdate, if you buy it, you get 24 games, season
Hmm.
1 of games.
Yeah. So it's not determined how many seasons they're gonna have, but you get these 24 games for free. As I say, there might be small 5-minute experiences. You may not get too much longevity from them. It may be something that you continually go back to, like sort of like just a clicker iOS game. Who knows? But
It also, they have their stereo dock, which has a pen, a Bluetooth speaker, and it looks like a little Robo Pal. To be honest, it's very
yeah.
silly looking, and I love it.
It's like the Nintendo Game and Watch, where it's like I'm gonna play Zelda or Mario on this for like approximately 30 seconds,
Yeah,
but it makes a nice alarm clock. This is that
yeah,
personified. So, but I bought one.
yeah.
I
Why
can't believe
not?
that the crank is a
The crank,
control
yeah.
The crank
and
is
not
just
a
an
The
input
crank is
mechanism, so it just
yeah.
depends on what the developers.
Yeah,
make a
but
fishing
Yeah,
game. Every
not,
game that comes to it is going to be a fishing game.
yeah, not every game will use it. It says, but it's like,
Yeah.
oh, so that's for charging it up, and then it's like, no.
no,
Like, is it a gimmick? No. Is it for charging up? No.
it's both a gimmick and not a gimmick, depending on
Mhm.
it? Question mark. Well, in that case, I will have one more thing to ask, which is, what?
Why? And will this fix me?
No, I mean, we all know why. You also pre-ordered a Steam Deck last
I
week.
did. I did.
You are
Oh my
our
God.
resident pre-order of tech.
I didn't
I'm
think
the
there was a tech
resident
fanatic. Yeah.
money waster, you mean?
Although I mean, it's crucially it's telling that you didn't pre-order either of the next gen consoles, but you did pre-order a Steam Deck and a Playdate week on week
Yes,
because they have promise.
they do. Whereas the other two at the time were pointless.
Yeah,
And I can play any game that's on the Xbox on my Xbox One X
or your
through
personal computer.
perpetuity. Yeah, or my PC and
Yeah.
wait 2 minutes, the same as I would on the Xbox One X, for the Ascent to load before I come on this podcast and realize I have no time for this. I'll just have to play another twin stick shooter another time. I'll just
I'm gonna need to
play something
crank
like.
this one out.
Yeah.
Imagine that if you have to like load up the game, still cranking it for 2 minutes. That's half of
Cranking it
my
for 2
cardio.
minutes is a turn
Yeah.
of phrase that I might get us censored on YouTube.
It's my
Only
cardio
if you
for the
put
day,
an
isn't it?
inappropriate picture at the
yeah.
background.
All right. Well, let's ask one more question, which is, Lucy, you had 2 beers today. Which beer
Mhm.
did you prefer? You had the
I
Deya
prefer
something or other that I've already forgotten.
routines. I drank this and I can't remember.
Yeah.
So, routines die hard.
Yeah.
No, routine bites hard.
And then you had the Bristol Craft Beer Festival 2021 4-way collab, Aromatic Isles, which I did as well.
Yes. I mean, I'll go to the Aromatic Isles. I've never had a beer that tastes like that. Like the Deya beers are always fantastic. TIPA especially so. It's like, yes, getting even more of that juice and that tropicalness condensed into like a 10% beer. It's like, can't get anything better than that. Except beer that you've never even conceived would be a thing, where it's like North African aromatic spices in a beer. which is it's great. As I say, it's not just a novelty. It's not just something that's weird and a bit different. It's a good beer at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna echo you that way. I really enjoyed the smoothness and the effervescence and citrus nature of the Mechanics of Illusion by Motive, but it West Coast India paled in comparison to the Aromatic Isles. This is just a fantastic beer. Obviously, not one we can say go grab because most people won't have access unless they are at the Bristol Craft Beer Festival 2021 this weekend. But I think, yeah, if you can find something from Wiper and True, I think it is very true to form, and yeah, just such an interesting beer. I really hope more comes out of this collaboration, that we get some less spice mix and maybe a more regular Wiper and True.
What I want to send is now like Northwest African cuisine as well with the beer to pair it. So
yeah, that's fair.
we'll get Ben on that.
But yeah, that.
Or should I say Northeast rather?
Yeah, Northeast. Yeah.
I get my East and West mixed up. I'd be bad at Black Skylands. I have no idea.
I mean, Black Skylands is fine.
Bomb.
You just click the thing on the map and then you just follow the little icon. But yeah, between the cardamom and like I do think there's probably coriander seed in that spice mix, just because I got a hint of soapiness. But whatever else is in there, it's what I like is it's not just the cardamom. I've had a cardamom beer before, and those are good. But the spice mix that Arroello Eats provided for this beer is so well rounded. It's like it's not like cardamom and other things. It's just like, oh, I recognize this is a hint of cardamom, but like the whole beer presents as this really unique taste, and usually you can sort of see the notes, but everything is just so well blended in between like Wiper and True's like nuanced but not super punch your face with taste approach and this spice mix. It's just like you said, one of the most unique beers I've ever had. I've never had anything like it, and it still tastes like beer is the thing that you sometimes just don't get, right? Like usually when you put novel things in beers, you're like, aha, this was neat, but also you can sometimes lose the beeriness, and the beeriness is so integral to why I like this beer, and it all works really well.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Agreed.
Fantastic beer. I'm now. They sent us each two. Now I don't know what to do with the second one.
Just get an IV and just hook it to your veins.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I'll try and find someone to split it with, I think. I mean, it was my...
2 IVs.
Yeah, one of my housemates' birthday on the weekend, and she quite likes craft beer, but she's just driven off to London for the next month and a half, so that's not going to last.
Lose, you lose.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's really, really tasty beer. And so that... Oh, and Adam, did you like your more cold Pepsi Classic... that you started the day with, the pod with, or did you prefer when it warmed up in the room?
I think I have to say I preferred it when it was chilled.
That's fair.
Yeah. Not quite fresh out of the fridge, but it's still got a wee bit of the chill to it.
A combination.
There's a nice sweet spot in there that lasts about 2 seconds.
Great. Well, I think that does us for the week. So we've been Tanked Up. You can find us at Tanked Upcast on all of the socials. We are on outoflives.net, where you can see VODs of like my Black Skylands stream, also on our YouTube page, and you can also read Adam's article on Samurai Warriors 5, which, if you are joined us late, was what Adam talked about for the first chunk of the pod, which you can
for
also...
too long, you might say.
Nah, just long enough. I found it really interesting.
Me too. I learned a lot.
Yeah.
Fascinated by the series now.
Yes, so, and you can tweet myself at the Omniarch, TheOmniarch, Lucy at JuicyLuce9, Adam at APT Snack, and us again at Tanked Upcast. Yeah, if you enjoyed, like, subscribe, etc. If you're here on Twitch, give us a follow if you enjoyed what you saw. Thanks again for the raid, friends. And or if you see this later on YouTube, do the comment thing on the thing that gets the thing, do the algorithm. Eloquency, I swear, I have a degree in philosophy and know how to write, but I just don't have it in me. It's the call to action is so boring to do every week. I just start saying the thing and the thing. We all know what I'm trying to say. And if you are listening to us as a podcast, rate and review on your podcatcher of choice. It helps get the show 10 more ears via algorithms. So I think that's us for another week. Yeah. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
I have a degree in modern languages and can barely speak or read, so you're all right. You're good. Bye.
Ciao.
www.outoflives.net